Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar session on Subscription and Recurring Revenue 101. My name is Mike Mackey. I'm the field CTO here at Mobilutions, coming to you with the 15 plus years of experience in advising customers on the right solutions to meet their business needs, both for here and now and well into the future. Specifically, today we're going to talk about what I like to call the who, what, when, where, why, and how of subscription and recurring revenue models, and understanding the core basics of why this should be important to you. From there, in future sessions, we'll dive into how to be successful and all the best practices and different things, and a little bit deeper dive on all of these key concepts. This really to set the ground so that we're all on the same page. So to kick things off, those key questions that I mentioned, we're going to walk through understanding subscription and recurring revenue models. I'm going to use those terms somewhat interchangeably throughout, and we'll understand more of that as we go. So when we talk about it, what do we mean by subscription or recurring revenue? Why is recurring revenue monetization important? Where are we seeing recurring revenue transformations happening? And tied back to the why it's important, who benefits from the value of these recurring revenue models, different types of entities in that chain of events, and how a recurring revenue transformation successful. Just a quick overview of key things to keep in mind, key considerations not to sleep on when looking at embarking on these types of transformations. And when is the right time to learn more? Of course, you're here and now listening to this. The right time is now, and we're going to go through all that and talk through it as we go. Okay. So first things first, what do we mean by subscriptions? I've seen it. Subscriptions can mean different things to different people. I've seen some customers come to me and say, well, we don't have subscriptions. We have set contract terms with the customer, and we bill them every month based on what that contract says we should bill them, or based on what they use of the services. In many senses, this is a subscription. When we talk about what do we mean by subscriptions, really any case where there's a recurring revenue model with the customer, that ongoing relationship. I may or may not bill them every month, quarter, year, whatever the period might be. I may or may not have specific usage or consumption terms or tiered or volumetric pricing that changes throughout that relationship. There's a whole lot of different things as to what that relationship can evolve into. But really, once we get into more than a one-off transaction, right, where I buy the thing, and you hope I come back to your business again as a satisfied customer, right? That's not a subscription. Once I come to you and I buy your service, your software, your everything, anything as a service type models, the things that I can use from that, and I have a start date, maybe it's evergreen, maybe I have an end date, but I have that ongoing relationship. So when we talk about that, we look at how that has changed, right? Where you have the traditional model of that series of standalone transactions that ultimately hoping the customer comes back for more. I provide great customer service in that transaction, but then you and I are done, right? The customer moves on, the business moves on, and we hope they come back again for the latest and greatest product, widget, thing, whatever the case is. Whereas a relationship focused, I have that continuous monetization, I have that ongoing relationship, and we'll talk more about how the customer perceives getting more value from that, the business perceives getting more value from that, having that understanding of, okay, I'm delivering outcomes, I'm delivering specific things for this customer, and they feel they are paying for what they use, right? We're managing that experience and their journey, all the different changes and evolutions of that relationship, and ensuring they have a good experience with the services they are delivered. So that's really the focus of moving from the traditional model and the software and solutions, and also organizational mindsets of what made that traditional model work, to looking at things from this new model perspective and how it's being adapted across all different industries. And when we talk about these subscriptions and these new business models, there's many different ways we can look at it, but kind of three key building blocks here. We can look at it from, like I've mentioned already, recurring subscriptions, where we have access to specific services. We'll call them subscriptions. There's a recurring fee. There might also be one-time usage and other types of fees, but we have that ongoing relationship where maybe there's a base rate, maybe there's some fluctuation in that base rate, but there's that ongoing, I expect to pay so much every month, right? Disney Plus, Amazon, Microsoft, Netflix, really, all these different types of services. I've got Office 365. I've got Microsoft Xbox, all these different things. Just from the Microsoft example, we see it across high tech, across media. Now also think of tolling and transportation of ongoing agreements I have for my transponder, for my access to certain, toll roads or premium shipping services, same day delivery, and all these other things where I have those different ongoing relationships as part of that. Then we transition to pay per use, right? Where I start to have an understanding. There may have been usage and other types of fees as part of the recurring, but really more of a focus on I'm paying for what I use, right? And I'm incentivized to use more to get better rates, right? Maybe, in the cloud storage example, I have fees based on how many gigs I use. The more gigs I'm using, the better the rate per gig, right? Or whatever the incentive is, to realize that the more I spend, the more I use the service, the greater the value returned is. So having that understanding of, being able to pay for what I use and being incentivized to utilize the solution. And then last but not least, the concept of bundling, right? So being able to take all of these things and say, okay, now we have the need to also bundle in hardware and other services and other things as part of that. You see the managed print services as one common example where uh, the customer may pay for the service. The hardware comes included. So the hardware is uh, in their location, right? They are the ones using it, but it is part of the service. Whether they end up owning it at the end of the service, or whether it is just located there and maintained by the business offering the services, there's options, right? But that idea of saying, okay, now you're getting this bundle, and the bundle, again, to use a coin of phrase, right? We want to incentivize or even kind of weaponize the pricing model to remain competitive. So, hey, if you get this full bundle, the ability to say the sum total of the bundle is, of course, cheaper, or comes with more add-ons and bells and whistles and so on than the sum of the parts purchased individually. So we look at that from, again, the managed print server services. I pay, for that as a service. Maybe I have a one-time installation fee, a recurring fee, some different usage and consumption pay per page, per print, color, and black and white maybe cost different. But there's ongoing maintenance part of it. There's IoT part of it, where the equipment can phone home and let the business know, hey, I've printed so many pages, and we know that after 3,000 pages, it's typically due for maintenance, and the magenta is low, and whatever the case might be, with all the different updates that come, we can provide a greater customer experience to the end customer because we have that information. Now we can perform the service or ship the replacements before they even ask for them. Okay, next, we're going to look at why the subscription or recurring revenue monetization is important. And when we talk about this, I want to keep some key things in mind, right? That the subscription economy, as we're calling it, is continuously evolving. There's always new ideas out there in terms of how we can engage with the customers, how we can monetize that relationship. So flexibility is key in this. And this comes back to those traditional models or traditional systems that support those one-off transactions of the quote unquote old ways, not having the flexibility, the future proof, if you will, to adapt to that evolution. So when we look at this and say, okay, maybe I start out and I want to offer subscription and I have a recurring base, but then my customers start asking for volumetric based or tiered based pricing, even in that recurring model to say, hey, if I sign up 10 users or 100 users, do I get a better rate per user if it's 100 users? Right? Or if it's a download, right? If it's that uh, gigabyte example in the cloud storage, or that black and white versus color pages printer in the printer example, all these different things. Does my monetization of that evolve as the customer demand and the customer interest in these products evolves? And I want to have the flexibility to do so. This is important from a subscription monetization standpoint because it allows you to change with the times. It allows you to give more accuracy in your charging to the customers, more transparency in understanding all these different types of things, and also being able to have all the analytics therein and the insights to be able to see where the customers are spending, how they're spending, what's catching on in the market, where would I like to see more change, more evolution, and so on, right? And all of this to help drive the customers, to incentivize the customers to stay with the business. That customer loyalty is important, right? That knowledge of, oh, I have this subscription history, and that history drives some degree of loyalty, right? As long as we're providing compelling pricing and compelling services, whether that's because I have the history of previous purchases, previous, consumptions, right? How many of us stick with a streaming platform because it knows us so well, it recommends things before we've even heard of them. All these different types of ongoing relationship that it's just easy to let it run and it goes on the credit card and we continue on with it. There's also those lines where, like I said, we want to incentivize consumption. You get better rates as you use the service more. Don't let it sit in your basement like that exercise bike that now is more of a laundry storage than anything else. We want to incentivize you to use the service. We want to get you on that bike, and the more you use it, the better your rates, the better the rates for the classes. Right? We've even seen that in that model where the hardware of the exercise equipment is tied to that digital subscription, and we want to get you using it. We don't want it just collecting dust. Right? And again, we've talked about legacy solutions, right? Not really being built for this, not really being able to understand the concept of usage and consumption without the equivalent concept of a new order, right? It's just consumption that has happened. I didn't order it, I'm just doing it, right? Issues with syncing up billing and invoicing and understanding that these things are happening on a cycle, not a traditional, I bought a thing, so invoice me, but rather I consumed and I'm using and I have this recurring relationship for services. Bill me on a particular cycle every month, every quarter, every year, whatever the case might be, right? And being able to have all that in a transparent way to also report on it internally, understand all that, and of course report it to the necessary customers, partners, and so on, so that they see exactly what's happening. I pulled out a quote here from MGI Research, an interesting article, what every CEO needs to know about the subscription business. That's a few years old, but the quote still holds up pretty well, that the bottom line is that subscriptions are more about a recurring revenue relationship with the customer than about any particular pricing model. I find this often worth considering when customers come to us and ask, well, can you do this? Can you do that? And it's very pointed in, can you do, $30 a month? Well, can you do $30 a month for the first 6 months and then $20 a month for the next 3 months? And so, right, getting hung up on the particular pricing model. And of course, that is important to understand that the appropriate solution selected, and the consulting and advisement given adapts to all the different pricing models that are being thought of. We also need to consider the things that haven't been thought of yet. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to having that flexibility to drive that relationship with the customer so that the customer feels they're getting the best possible service. Next here, looking at where are recurring revenue transformations happening. I've already used a few different examples. Really, the thing is, this is happening all over across really every industry under the sun. If you think back, this is something that really started out in more in the, let's say, telco and utilities space, where we all know years back we would have our cell phone plan where we had certain minutes, certain data, certain text messages. Now these days it's all unlimited, right? An even better user experience. I don't even need to think about that. But back in the day where I needed to have those consumables, I paid the base rate and then I paid for what I used. And maybe it got better rates based on certain times a day, certain distances. I got more incentives after I exceeded a certain amount. My data downloads didn't cost as much per download, or maybe they costed more, depending upon how I was being incentivized to use the service. Now we see it across media and entertainment. I've mentioned content streaming and gaming and all these different things as to how those subscription services have taken off. Physical goods, being able to provide the equipment as a service, being able to provide additional services on top as the equipment becomes smart, right? IoT and so on, that I want to offer that, or additional consumables and services, warranties and so on, above and beyond the physical device that is purchased, and whether that device is paid for up front or the cost of that device is distributed over the lifetime of the subscription contract. We've seen it in IT, right? And being able to package IT solutions and the outcome driven approach there. Software as a service as well. We've already mentioned, cloud-based services and things like that, being able to offer that software. Adobe's a great example there in the image of having moved from that shrink wrapped package software where they sell you the box and hope you come back for the next version, versus now you have it in the cloud and you have the latest and greatest at your fingertips all the time. You have that ongoing relationship. And an interesting story, you can look up their revenue and their stock and everything and how that changed when they made that switch. They were no longer selling hundreds of dollars worth of boxed software, right? And Photoshop wasn't cheap, but they went to getting, $20 a month for it. So from a revenue perspective, well, they were getting less to start off, but from that predictability, that ongoing relationship, and we'll talk more about that as we go, things got much clearer and much, much greater. Consumer products and many other things. I won't belittle all of the different industries here, right? But we've seen it from everything as retail and education as well, being able to have those platforms and those incentives and those different subscriptions to content or pay as you go model and things from a retail perspective, all the different incentives there in telemedicine and life sciences and so on, right? So the idea here is that really it's cross industry. It's gotten to the point where I've seen it in every industry I can think of. And the beauty of it is the subscription economy is really industry agnostic at this point. Customers want that relationship with wherever they're interacting. If they're going to have to come back more than once and they're going to be interested in using that service more than a one-off transaction, I'm not just going to the supermarket and buying a carton of eggs. Now I'm subscribing to something. I'd love to be able to subscribe to eggs with the egg prices these days. But the idea there that It's not that one-off transaction like we have at the supermarket. We have more ongoing relationships and wanting to have that at our fingertips without really having to think about it. And even then, I've seen it in supermarket use cases as well. But this quote here again from ERP Today, just showing the growth, right? Over the past decade, it's seen 435% growth, really, like I said, coming out of being more telco and high tech exclusive type concepts to now really expanding across to all sorts of different industries and expected to reach a market size of 1.5 trillion by the end of this year. Next up, we want to talk about who benefits from the value of recurring revenue monetization models. And we've addressed this through various points as we go through, but I wanted to highlight some different key parts of the process and who benefits. First up, end customers. I've already mentioned some of these things, the ability to have lower upfront costs, spreading out those purchases across instead of more of a CapEx purchase, more of an OpEx view, having the ability to include those hardware or other large items, but spread it out over time so that as I ramp up, as I use the service, I feel like I'm paying a reasonable amount for what I'm getting rather than having a high upfront cost, might be a barrier to entry, might prevent me from wanting to go that route because I'm not sure if I'm going to use it, right? Those types of things. The ability to have the flexibility and convenience, contract change processes. It's not that one-off transaction. It's not that rigid approach of being able to say, okay, I want to ramp up and ramp down. I want to be able to add additional features and move from the silver package that I start out with to the gold package, or from 10 seats for the software as a service to 20 seats as my team grows. All those different types of things, which ties into the next being that continuous value and updates to always improve, be it the software, the Adobe example. I don't need to go and do another whole purchase of a new version. I have that continuous updated experience in a cloud model, but also that ability to continue to update and improve on the relationship and which services and features I want to be part of my subscription, my contract. It allows for better budgeting from a customer perspective, having that predictable expenses and understanding on average the subscriptions cost me X per period, right? Being able to plan accordingly, knowing what those base recurring rates and average consumption and peak periods and all that sort of thing there, rather than needing to, again, budget for a one-off transaction that happens, one particular point in the year. And of course, the personalized experience, being able to, depending upon what the business offers, have those tailored services of, personalizing my bundle, my subscription, which features and things I want to add. You can get as granular as you want in the subscription world. We think back to the TV models of old, of, buying a cable TV package and you get 500 channels of which you watch 12, right? Wanting that personalized, that tailored experience led to the streaming experience. Now we've kind of come full circle there, where now I have to buy how many different streaming services to get everything I want, right? But I have that ability to look at things from which personalized package I want, maybe not in all the streaming providers, but in different types of subscriptions. Okay. From the business perspective, right? Whereas we had better budgeting on the customer, we have predictable revenue from the business. I mentioned with Adobe that example of, instead of having the large purchases when a new version comes out, I have that predictable revenue. And it actually works out to be greater in the end for understanding where that revenue, where and when that revenue is coming in. I get a higher customer lifetime value, right, with long-term earnings from those individual customers rather than that previous model of the one-time sale and hope they come back for more. I can also track that much better rather than the hope they come back for more and not always knowing that it's the same customer, right? That might be more of a sales or marketing thing that I know them, but from a revenue perspective, in those types of one-off transactions, I don't always know that it's Mike Mackey coming back for more. Whereas in a subscription model, I do. And I have those improved customer relationships tying back to the end customer experience, right? To have that ongoing engagement, stronger loyalty, again, which ties back to the previous two of lifetime value and predictable revenue. The scalability and growth, the ability to adapt the business, right? Expand and sustain new models, stay competitive, both in pricing and what is being offered and how it is being offered, and the data and insights that go with it to be able to analyze customer behavior, the business's behavior, what's working, what isn't, how can we make better decisions. Next, we look at things from a shareholder perspective, right? From a business, we've got that better predictable revenue and customer lifetime value. Of course, that also ties into the shareholders, being able to understand, okay, now I have much better predictability, tend to see some, improvements in stock price in traded companies and things like that, right? Being able to have that view from there's less risk when there's more predictability, right? It's more attractive for investors. There's lower churn on the customer side, lower churn from the shareholder investment side. So being able to have that efficiency across all of that and understand how the market is adapting as the subscription models are evolving, right? And here you see potential for market domination, right? As you have this much flexibility to your subscription models, we talk through about, what's your competitive edge, your long-term leadership. You now can do things uh, before your competition, or at least ensure that you can quickly follow any new competitive trends and things that are seen out there in the market. And last but not least, and it depends on the business model, how applicable this is, but the benefit to partners, being able to have things where you have resellers, affiliates, and so on, right? Platforms where you might sell the services of other parties, where your business winds up taking their cut, passing on that revenue, and so on, having that multi sided view of the world to understand, okay, there might be different rebates and royalties and things, right, that come with that recurring revenue. The customer's paying me, but I have to pay some piece out to my partners, to my affiliates, to the intermediaries, the distributors, resellers, affiliates, and so on. Having that wider network for reaching customers and increasing customer stickiness, because now I can sell through those affiliates and still retain that customer relationship. Or I can sell my partners' goods, wares, software, apps, games, etc., their content, and make sure the customers who want their content are coming through my platform. Right, which of course allows for more upsell and cross-sell potential of bringing in all these different partners together with my own businesses offerings into, again, back to those bundled ideas or that single platform idea, so that that my customer feels even more value having that one-stop shop and being able to do that, and of course driving additional profits therein. Right, all sorts of different incentives with business growth of incentivizing your resellers, your affiliates, your partners, and so on to continue to use the platform, continue to offer your services, and better support and training, having that single platform for all, that consistency, so that when you're onboarding new partners and affiliates and so on, you have that improved experience for them, as well as, of course, for the end customers leveraging that platform. So it all kind of ties together there in terms of all the different parties that can benefit from this move to a more recurring revenue model. So next, how are recurring revenue transformations successful? And I think this particular topic deserves its own session with a deep dive at some point, but I wanted to highlight some key things that I would advise to any business looking at adapting, starting out, whether you've already started and you're really looking to ramp it up, or this is something where maybe your market, your industry, or your competitors are already on that track and you need to get there. Some key things to understand. There's a need to ensure the business readiness, ensure that the business has the right mindset to get there, right? And that means being able to disconnect, in a sense, from the old ways. Understand, was it done that way before because the business needed it done that way, the customers needed it done that way, or because that was the way it had to be done based on the old way of doing things or the old systems, right? Shifting that mindset to understand, what do we want to be when we grow up, for lack of a better idiom. uh, how do we shift that mindset and understand, okay, here's what needs to change? And sometimes that's harder than you might imagine, especially in people in businesses that are very established, set in their ways, and very understood in how things have been and are today. Then, of course, there's the need to ensure the customer readiness, that the customer base sees the value, right? You got to understand that the customers are asking for this. And like we've said, in most industries, they seem to be, but needing to understand that, I've come across some examples where the, the business wants to move to a subscription to monetize the additional services that they had no way to monetize today. Well, that means customers getting them for free today. So how do you tell the customer that it's better now that they have to pay for them, right? So there's some logic there and some planning, some marketing that needs to happen as well, but also understanding that in my modeling, okay, how am I going to incentivize this, that it actually works out better for you in the end, right? But having that ongoing relationship and the way we can incentivize them, I've already highlighted all the benefits, but making sure the customer's ready for that is key. And last but certainly not least in this category is to ensure the technical readiness, to make sure the systems and capabilities are ready to support these new models, the complexities and flexible needs of subscription-based offerings, and whether we're looking at usage and consumption and event-based pricing or more recurring pricing, how variable is that? In either case, are we talking including allowances and tracking balance management and bundling and billing and payment cycles, all these different things we've talked about already, needing to understand that you have the systems in place that can do this. And many legacy systems cannot, right? Or you can bend them and bend them and bend them until they're going to break because they're really not designed for that new type of model, which comes into understanding, okay, additional considerations around that. I mentioned scalability and flexibility to be able to support all these different transactions, usage, consumption, different tiered pricing, all the evolving business models, having the seamless integration, right? The subscription, the monetization of these business models is only a part of the puzzle. It's a significant part of the puzzle, but I also need to make sure my downstream processes and my billing, my finance, my ERP. I also need to make sure my upstream processes are ready for this, my CRM, my CPQ, all these ways that my customers and my business, my end users might engage with this information. I need automation and efficiency, especially when we talk about things moving towards a greater degree of volume or a greater degree of granularity. I don't want to have a user involved every time these events happen. I need automation. I need to reduce the manual effort and the risk that brings. I need to have automated things like renewals and contract extensions and contract cancellations and changes and endpoints and all these different things. And again, downstream compliance, RevRec. I need to have that automated. I don't want to have a user having to try and unwind. What does this subscription mean from a revenue recognition compliance perspective? That should all happen automatically. Billing and payments mentioned above, and seamless integration. Again, automation, right? Being able to automate how that gets triggered. When should the customer be billed and invoiced? How should that information be summarized and discounted? How should payment be handled? How should I automate that payment, right? How can I make sure that when a customer submits a payment, I know what to do with it automatically? Not that I need to be in there matching things up, but that the system can do it automatically. And again, ensure things like tax and compliance are also supported. Customer experience, we've mentioned throughout, to have that on things like onboarding and self-service portals integrated into your subscription monetization. Be able to see, where am I at in my subscription? How can I see what I've used to know what tier I'm at and whether or not I should, you know, use it a little bit more this period so that I get a better rate next period, whatever the case might be, right? Wanting to have that stickiness factor to minimize churn and ensure the customer feels they're getting a good experience. And as mentioned in a few of these points, the compliance, the financial accuracy, adhere to different standards, audit requirements, and really have that level of traceability and transparency, both for the end customer and for the internal business, and of course, any auditors and compliance rules as well. So all of these things are key considerations, which ultimately leads us to looking at things from how do we choose the right software solutions? Now here we look at this, we want to make sure that we tick all those same boxes from the previous slide. We need something that's future proof. We need to support all the different types of business models, all the different types of pricing, and the things that the business hasn't even thought of yet. Having that flexibility is key. Having tight integration to ERP and financials to understand all those different downstream revenue and compliance, financial forecasting, and so on. I would say that is often underlooked in some of the subscription monetization transformation projects I've seen, when customers look at it from, well, I want the subscription engine tightly integrated to the front end. That is a valid concern. That is a valid point. But I would argue that it is much more important that that subscription engine be tightly integrated to the back end, as much, if not more, than the front end, to be able to ensure all those back end financial compliance aspects. Because what really makes subscription different is ultimately the financials and, like I keep saying, the recurring revenue of it all. So needing to have that tight integration. It's great to have AI-driven analytics and reporting to be able to understand, okay, where are my customers coming from? Where is my revenue coming from? What's that lifetime value, that churn rate, and all these different things to understand, okay, which products are performing well, which products are keeping my customers engaged and spending more. Sometimes you might find, hey, the silver and gold product actually bring in more revenue than the platinum, right? Even though the platinum level has the, greater recurring fee, I find I get more customers onboarded on the gold. All these different types of insights that can be exposed to your AI analytics and perform all the necessary calculations for the business. Seamless payment and tax compliance, again, somewhat repetitive here, right? But being able to have that interface to be able to take any type of payment. Right? Customers now want to pay with credit cards, with Bitcoin, with points, right? With non-monetary values, right? All these different things. What does that mean? How do I take that payment? What does that mean downstream from how I do my revenue reporting and my tax and so on? And last but not least, selecting the right system integrator partner. Something that Mobilution's offered. So I personally am a little biased, of course, but needing to understand the industry expertise and proven success of the partner who's done this before and been able to support different types of subscription models and a focus in those areas. I've seen other cases where, businesses have used their tried and true relationship with their existing SI who might not have that level of experience. And even that SI, like we talked about, needing to make sure the business and the customer and the solutions are ready for that new mindset of the subscription economy. So too must the partner. The partner has to be ready to be able to think outside the box for those things, not the traditional way of doing business. And ultimately, sometimes even advising, hey, that's an interesting idea, but I wouldn't do it that way. Right? Typically, what we've seen, the way this works, we might recommend doing it the other way. All sorts of those different conversations that come about from that experience and that expertise of having focused on recurring revenue and subscription-based economies. Seamless integration, of course, all these different systems, you choose one vendor, Each vendor, software vendor out there would love it if your ecosystem was wall to wall their stuff, but that's not how it often works out. So having the right system integrator to be able to understand all these different moving pieces of how these different things need to interface and talk to one another, the APIs and all the things that come with that. Some of them hopefully standard, depending upon which vendors you're choosing. In other cases, needing to adapt and handle that from the project perspective. Customization and configuration, and I distinguish between the two, right? Customization, I'm writing code. I'm doing something different. Configuration, being able to leverage those existing capabilities, point and click, drag and drop, configure the solution, and be able to leverage that with minimizing customization, keeping the core clean, those types of key concepts, right? And having an SI who understands the difference and understands that, um, customizations only get you so far, especially when it comes to future upgrades and conflicts and things like that. So being able to tailor the solution to your business model, but also advise on how to leverage existing capabilities and configuration models and set you up for an easier path down the line with the right future rather than yet another change request to yet another customization. End-to-end implementation support, right? Not just coming in to do the subscription monetization, although many do just that as well. That is, of course, an option, but looking at things from an end-to-end project governance perspective, understanding and helping and consulting on the changes that are involved, the changes to the business, the changes to the day-to-day and the data flows and so on and so forth, right? And being able to drive adoption and ensure the return on investment. These software solutions aren't always cheap, right? But the return on investment is substantial if you have that helping hand to get you there and get the successful project off the ground. And tying it all back together really to even the first bullet on this slide, that scalable and future ready solution, right? Being able to understand how do we set this up to evolve with the business growth, evolve with the technologies and so on as things come. That ties into both the software in the first section and the SI view of it and how we set it up, how we avoid customization and add-ons and unnatural acts when they aren't absolutely required to be able to ensure that future proofness and also to be able to train and mentor and guide, consult with, et cetera, advise the business and the end users as to how best to go about that and what to consider next. All right. Last but not least, when is the right time to learn more? And I did mention this on my initial slide. Of course, the right time is now, which is why you're all here. Being able to understand all of these key high level concepts, happy to take it a level further to continue the conversation. There will be future webinars, deep dives on these various topics, but I strongly encourage you to reach out with questions, do your own research, but we're happy to help here at Mobilutions with our insights and expertise to assist you in learning more about how to adapt to these types of new business models. I've included here some links. Of course, in a recording, you can't click the links, but I will include them in the write-up later. But you can find them all on mobilutions.com. There's information there. Please feel free to reach out to me. My contact details on the right there as well, really for any future learning. And again, the right time to learn more is now. Be able to understand what are your competitors doing, what's happening in your industry, and that subscription monetization train has left the station. You don't want to miss the next train, so to speak. You want to stay on track and make sure that you're remaining competitive with all the other businesses out there. Okay, so I hope this has been informative and enlightening for you. Thank you for listening. I look forward to doing these sessions again in the future. And in next sessions, we will hope to make more interactive and engaging with a live audience. So we look forward to that. Again, please feel free to reach out with any questions, comments, or areas of interest, we're happy to help. Thank you very much.